Will be on a listen-only mode until the question and answer session of today's call. Today's call is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect. I'd now like to introduce Terry Lee. Sir, you may begin.
Thank you, Robin, for that introduction. Well, welcome back for those of you that are returning to this wonderful webinar series. And those of you that are new, welcome as well to the Connecting the Digital Footprint webinar series. Morning, my name is Terry Lee. I'm the Community Affairs Specialist with the FDIC Atlanta region, and I help bankers, community partners, and other stakeholders identify community development opportunities and approaches to implement strategies that are responsive to the credit, investment, and service needs of the community. So, you know, if you missed out on our first one last week, that's okay. I pulled a couple highlights that I wanted to share with you about the conversation, and we had great panelists on the last one. We had Christine Fox with the State Ed Tech Directors Association, and she shared some seamless digital learning insight and the need for quality access and what that means, and that trickled down to a conversation about the homework gap, and it was great. And then we also had last week we had Michael Flood with Kajit, and he shared education broadband that is designed to accomplish the students' education mission, no matter where they are. And his organization was really one that pioneered putting Wi-Fi on buses, and trying to maximize students' commute, especially when it was extended or long. So we had a lot of great information from him. And then we also had Carol Miller with Broadband Technology Department of Business and Economic Affairs, and she shared the capacity building and the need for cities to be leaders, to attract those champions such as hospitals and schools, and really was beating home the fact that fiber is the way forward. So had a lot of great information there. And then Robert McLaughlin with the National Collaborative for Digital Equity, he shared his systematic approach through their VISTA pilot program, which supports, by the way, the digital inclusion through education, financial, and economic inclusion. So we really had a robust conversation last week, and that information is going to be in the chat function. So again, what we're trying to do, since you missed the last one, or if you're just joining us for this one, what we're trying to do is we're trying to provide you with resources, individuals that are in this space, so that we can move forward, make connections, and really solve this issue of this lack of equity when it comes to digital access. So take note of those folks that are listed in the chat function, and reach out to them. They're willing to help, just like the folks that I have joining me today. They're willing to help, and they're ready to go. So now, also what I want to say is, thank you for the questions that keep coming in. Those are timely. I'm funneling them to the appropriate people. We're getting the questions answered. We are making those connections on this end. I hope you all are doing the same. And I just thought that was pretty important to say, because a lot of times when people show up to events or to webinars, they get a lot of great information, they hear from a lot of great presenters, but then that's it. That's the end of the story, and everybody kind of goes their own way. So what we're trying to do here is create that connection and keep the connection. And so the reason why I shared webinar number one is that, well, right now we're getting close to summer is. So school's out, June. Back in, pre-COVID, everybody is, great. They're out, they're running around. But now, none of that activity is happening with all the ills in the world today and things that are taking place. It almost takes your breath away. But then we have to always be mindful that we need to be the ones that are level-headed, the forward thinkers, and taking a look at what's gonna make the environment better for us as we go forward. And speaking to that is this digital equity series. And so to kind of get back to why I was bringing up the first webinar, is because we're viewing this as as a relay. So this year was supposed to be Olympics, right? Canceled it. And part of the Olympics, the track and field portion is one of my favorites, and in particular the relay. And if you're not really familiar with track and field and the relay, what happens is you have a team and they have one baton, and they take that baton and they run a certain amount or a certain distance, and they hand that baton off. And so that's what I think this webinar series is doing, is that it's not taking a look at one piece because it's more important than the other, but it's really a team, and we're really carrying that baton. And that first baton was broadband. And that was our first segue into this conversation, and saying that that's important, that's the first step, and that's needed. This next step, so passing the baton off from the first one to this one here, ensuring computer access is where we're headed now. So, and not only computer access, but computer access for the LMI youth, which is the new norm. So for today's webinar, equipping LMI youth for the new norm and ensuring that computer access, we also wanted to lay over the fact that we're leveraging CRA and the resource that it can bring to key dimensions around it. So, and we're talking about key dimensions around digital inclusion, so the systematic approach to this whole effort to reach out to LMI communities. Now, let me see here. So I said I was gonna do a little bit better job here on the slides and just give you a little taste of what I've been talking to you about. So now you can visualize it. These are our upcoming webinars that we have. And this is our relay, the rest of the relay that you see here after 1 and 2. So, and we'll continue to share that information out, so you all have the updated information and you can have access to the wonderful speakers. Now this slide here, I wanted to show this because folks are coming to the call. They're hopping on, and this kind of gives you a little breakdown of who's been joining the call, or who joined the last call actually, and then we'll get a different take on today's call. But just let you know that we have a little mixed bag, and that's what's needed. We need to have people from different areas talking about the same subject so that we can break the silos and just have a cohesive conversation so that we can implement things and provide solutions for those communities that need it and what they need. Okay. Now, so for today's agenda, real quick, y'all can read this. We're gonna get right into it after the introduction, and then we'll take off, and then we'll start getting into the information what you all popped on the line for. So again, thank you for hopping on today's call. And then here's just a quick shot of the panelists that we have for you. So to give you a quick second to absorb that. Ulrike Smith, the CRA Compliance Officer with Franklin Savings Bank. And we'll hear a little bit more from all the panelists here in a second. Sarah Segrest, Director of Business Development, the Douglas Stewart Company. Lisa Trisciani, I hope I didn't butcher that, Vice President, Connection Public Sector Solutions. And then Bob McLaughlin, or Robert McLaughlin, Executive Director, National Collaborative for Digital Equity. So then, of course, I have to share this little piece here. The views expressed in this presentation are the presenters and do not necessarily represent the views of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. So getting into the Community Reinvestment Act piece of this, and to kind of level set again, so that we're all on the same page. And just I won't go into too much detail here, but I will say that with CRA, we're taking a look at ways to explore how banks can and have been making investments under the Community Reinvestment Act to remove the digital divide barriers to education, financial, and economic inclusion. And that's really why we're gathered here today, is to use that leverage and that idea around this topic. And of course, oh, I'm sorry, my fingers got a little jumpy there. But of course, we have additional resources. So if you're for the other agencies, the OCC and the FRB, in addition to FDIC, we got the other resources in the chat function. Take a look at the links there. We hope those are helpful. But what we're going to do right now is I'm going to introduce you to the panelists, and then we'll dive into the conversation. So let's see. We have everybody online. Let's go with Ulrike. Are you there?
I am.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. And Ulrike, can you just let the people on the line know who you are, your organization, and what you do?
Of course. First, good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting me on this panel. My name is Ulrike Smith. I'm the CRA officer for Franklin Savings Bank. We are a $500 million mutual savings bank located in rural New Hampshire. We have 8 branches. So we're a fairly small player in all of this, but we take our CRA activities very seriously, and I'm really excited to share with everyone what we have done.
Wonderful, thank you for that. And as I've heard it called, you were referred to as the little engine that could, or the little bank that could. So I thought that was a wonderful analogy, and thank you for joining us today. Lisa, I'm sorry. Let me before I go to Lisa, Sarah.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Really glad to be here. My name is Sarah Segrest. I'm the Director of Business Development for the Douglas Stewart Company, which is a distributor for education technology to both K-12 and higher education. I have about 25 years of experience in various technology industries and a specialization in emerging technology, and I have a passion for tech that can advance equity and drives positive change in education, business, and society. So really glad to be here.
Welcome, Sarah. I'm glad that you can join us today. Lisa.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me. It's definitely an honor to be included in this panel. I am the Vice President for our state, local, and education for Connection Public Sector Solutions. We're part of the Connection family. We're a technology solutions provider. I've been with the company almost 26 years. I try to tell people I started when I was 12, and focusing only on state and local K-12 and higher ed customers. We have an amazing team. We've been so busy, probably the busiest I've ever been. Very excited to get in front of customers again, and so that we can help in person. So thank you very much. Looking forward to the conversation.
Wonderful. Glad to have you. Glad to have you. Robert?
Hi, Terry. Thanks very much. This is Bob McLaughlin, and I'm founder and executive director for the National Collaborative for Digital Equity, and I get to partner with these amazing souls. And our work has focused for several years now on opening up funding partnerships in collaboration with education foundations and also banks under the Community Reinvestment Act to provide sustained support for removing digital divide barriers to economic and educational opportunity. And 2 things that I think are noteworthy of the biases that we bring to this work. One is that our belief that digital equity should be systemic. In other words, it should be fostering affordable access not only to devices and broadband as obvious essential food groups, but also tech support, librarian support, quality content, and so on. And that digital equity for its own sake, we find ironically not terribly interesting unless it's in explicit support for and alignment with efforts to build pathways to economic and educational opportunity for low and moderate income learners of all ages. So in that context, really happy to be part of this conversation. Thank you.
Well, we really are. We're really glad to have all of you part of this conversation. Again, the timely piece. Part 2, access, device access. So starting off the conversation, Ulrike, I'm gonna have you lead us off here as we start and get into the the Q&A portion of it. So
okay.
With that, just wanted to start off the question with, in an effort to receive positive CRA consideration for your bank, you provided funding for the refurbishment and donation of digital devices. Can you tell us how your bank got behind this initiative?
Yes. First, I learned that there were two key barriers to economic inclusion for LMI youth, one of those being the lack of computers, the hardware. And I learned that at a summit hosted by the National Collaborative for Digital Equity, whose executive director, Bob McLaughlin, is also on the panel today. On the day of that summit, I was really, really overwhelmed and saddened what I had learned that day. I had no idea how serious this problem was. So on the drive back, I knew that Franklin Savings Bank needed to be, and more importantly, also could be part of the solution. Although we are a small player, Bob and I continued to chat, and he has been an absolutely amazing partner. And you, Terry, alluded to this earlier. It does take a group of people. Any one group or person cannot accomplish this. So I cannot thank Bob enough for his help in making this all happen. So that's how we really got behind this initiative.
Oh, wonderful. I mean, and so it was that need, and I think that's what really drives a lot of these initiatives is the people have a need, and we try to fill that need, and just so happens this one's digital equity. So with that, after you made that determination that this is the arena we wanted to play in, we have this to offer for the community. What did the process look like to really start moving forward and getting engaged with digital equity?
Yep. Again, Bob and I worked on this together, and our first chore was really to communicate with the school to find out what their needs are. And one of the things that was very apparent early on is that you have to just keep pressing because you're not always talking to the right person the first time. So we really kept on going until we got to the right people, the people that knew what needed to be done. And that once we got that done, things really took off. We are very, very fortunate here in Franklin. We have an awesome superintendent who was really, really supportive of this. So what happened is, we started working with the IT department and the superintendent to first of all find out what the needs were. And that was a big discovery for me because I'm sort of thinking, oh, we're donating or we will be donating hardware to the school system. Well, the school system didn't need it. The students needed it. So that was a surprise to me. And so, but it was good. We learned from that. So then what we decided to do is to look at, first of all, what did we have in our own inventory for hardware that we could donate? So we learned something on that too, because we didn't have any laptops. We only had desktops. The school preferred laptops, but we didn't have those. So we said, we'll just use our desktops to begin with. And I'll talk a little bit later about some alternatives to that, because those alternatives, we are probably going to use that route the next time. So we partnered with Bob, who has these amazing partnerships with a lot of different people. And the first thing that they did is we shipped our IT people cleaned the hardware up totally. And then we shipped it to this company, partnership with Bob again, and they install they clean it up again. They install Microsoft Office. They install some educational programs, and then they will send those computers to whoever is going to be the receiver. So that was kind of a challenge for us too, because the school has privacy issues, and we obviously have privacy issues. So what we decided to do in order to make sure that we could document that these computers went to LMI students, we developed a letter, and we had the school sign that letter. The school was the decision maker over who was receiving those computers, because they know who the LMI families are. We don't know that, and they can't tell us that. So we provided them with a letter, they signed a letter, and they provide us with a letter confirming that. So one really important piece of this is that we, at the time we were doing this, were going through a CRA exam. So we were not, and the project isn't totally finished yet, so, and our exam is finished, so we did not get credit in the last exam per se. However, I want to say this. I spoke with the examiners about what we were doing, particularly about the letter to confirm the LMI status, and they were all on board with the, first of all, with the project, and also what we were doing on how we were demonstrating that the hardware went to the right family. So it definitely was a learning process, and we couldn't have done it without Bob, for sure, because he knows a lot of people, and he has partnerships that are really valuable. Now, one thing I will say is that there is another way to actually supply the hardware if the company that's donating it doesn't have the hardware themselves. And that is, there are plenty of other places. In New Hampshire, it's actually the state of New Hampshire. They have plenty of equipment that they like to recycle. So what we're thinking about doing the next time is we will just take their hardware and pay for the recycling costs. So that way we're still meeting our goal in the right way, which is with the right hardware with what's needed.
Mm-hmm. For the population that you're targeting, the LMI youth.
Exactly.
And just for clarification, so you were in the process of going through an exam while the project was going on. So you were seeking feedback from the examiners that were in the shop, and going back and forth with your intentions and what you were looking to do, and you received favorable feedback with that. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, just another question here. So where do you see the bank going now?
Well, this is part of our long-term CRA initiative. There is no question about it. When I went to the board and spoke about this, they were very, very excited about it. So we are in this for the long run. I think, it isn't, I just want to mention also our town, the 61.5% of our students are eligible for a free or reduced lunch, and that has increased steadily over the last 5 years. So what's happened is we're doing a whole lot of other initiatives, which are not part of this discussion today, but those initiatives are partnerships with the school board, with the city council, with the superintendent, in the private sector, and we are in this for the long run. That's for sure, and it has the support of our board.
Well, wonderful. Well, Ulrike, thank you for those comments. If we can get you just to stick around for the end of the Q&A piece of this.
Of course.
Okay, wonderful. I want to switch our attention over to Sarah. Sarah, are you there?
Yeah. Hi.
Wonderful, Sarah. So bringing you into this conversation from your perspective, what trends are you seeing now, and how does this play into the digital equity movement?
Yeah, good question. So as we think about digital devices and broadband as sort of fundamental pieces, and I like to make an analogy with Maslow's hierarchy of needs and look at those as sort of the physiological components that we need to have in place for learning. But it's not just that. It's thinking about other needs like safety and security, whether that's cyber safety or the security of mental health support. Social and emotional learning is a very critical piece for setting a foundation for learning for students. And as we think about low and moderate income families and students, have probably more than their fair share of hardships. So dealing with stress and anxiety and things like that is actually impeding their ability to learn. They're not going to have their minds open to learning if not dealing with that. So some really interesting partners that we have that have technologies that can help support those needs of students as well, so that we can get them to the point that their minds are open and ready for learning, and that we're actually being able to fully utilize these digital devices and give them access. Things like English language learners, which I know there's a pretty high population of those in these communities as well, making sure that language is not impeding the ability to learn. And even if the students are learning, English in school, their parents might not quite be there yet. And as we've been in a situation where students are at home and their parents are now teachers, that's not only they might not have the computing devices, but then having their parents help them learn in English is a barrier as well. So thinking about supporting the entire family with things like English language learning is very important. And then last but not least, as we look at back to school in the fall and having students go back into the classroom, thinking about how we can maintain continuity of learning between the classroom and when learning might still happen at home or in other places. And there's a question in the chat about after-school programs, which I think is an important part of this whole ecosystem. So really looking at I know Ulrike mentioned it takes a group to make this happen, and to think about that in terms of the devices as well. There's sort of a group of supporting technology and software that we need to think about having as a core foundation to really help support learning and impactful learning.
Wonderful. So taking a look at the tools necessary, what really goes into the online learning aspect from your perspective?
Yeah, well, again, the base level is things like cybersecurity and web filtering, making sure that students don't go off on the wrong path on the internet, and there's many of those pitfalls there. So just to be able to help guide them and keep them in that safe place. Also looking for triggers that might indicate that they might be in trouble. There's some algorithms with partners that we have that can alert educators to potential suicide risk for students and help to proactively be involved in that. And also utilizing tools like immersive learning environments. So in virtual reality, and you can experience a lot of those even just online in a web browser, there's a lot of evidence that shows that that can positively impact learning and the retention of information. And so utilizing those things to help give these students an edge in gaining the information they need to be on this path towards economic success and security in their lives. Thinking again about the social and emotional learning aspect and brain fitness. There's a really interesting study by Brain Futures around brain fitness and how that impacts executive function. These are all part of these soft skills that help to develop for not only learning, but are really important to employers for careers, helping students understand how to do things like mindfulness and using biofeedback to help them understand what that looks like. And also a lifeline for educators to students that can help measure the impactfulness of their learning when they're not right in front of their students. Having tools like assessments that are built in and analytics that can be fed back to the educator to get an idea of how each student is doing and help to personalize that learning even when you might not be in a physical space together. So those are some examples of some tools that we see as being particularly impactful in a digital learning situation.
And that really brings up a great point, because it's not anymore of just you get a laptop and then you plop somebody down in front of it and you turn them loose. Mm-hmm. You really have to have the barriers on there to kind of help facilitate that type of learning, that positive type of learning. So, well, absolutely. Thank you for your comment, and I'd like you to stick around too. So if you're just now tuning in, this is webinar number 2, equipping low and moderate income youth for the new normal, ensuring computer access. And we just heard from Ulrike Smith with Franklin Savings Bank and Sarah Segrest with the Douglas Stewart company. So I want to thank you for those comments. So shifting over and switching gears here, Lisa, are you there?
I'm here.
Wonderful, wonderful. So to bring you into the conversation, around this. So when it comes to creating a full solution, you know, folks in your industry talk about, and I'll let you talk about a little bit more. But can you speak to the kidney?
Yeah, so I feel like we're kind of in the middle of everything. So we work with Sarah, and I've been talking with Bob and learning from Bob for years and years. And I feel like technology expectations, they change so rapidly from, you know, in the classroom versus out of the classroom. These kids are born with the ability to know how to use a phone, know how to use an iPad, know how to use any type of PC device, and it seems like they're now teaching their parents how to do it. We're in a situation right now where there's about 11 million kids out there that don't have devices. So there's 11 million kids essentially that aren't getting that remote learning, that aren't receiving that distance learning, or there could be a predicament where they could be in a home that have multiple siblings and they have to share that device. So it's just, I feel like the digital equity piece, and I remember Bob presenting in a classroom, and this resonates. I think this was about 15 years ago, and I remember as clear as day, we were at Granite State University in a classroom, and he said, everybody deserves to have the same technology to learn. And it doesn't define you of how much money you have. Everybody has the right for the same tools. And so we try to put everything together. So whether it's the software, whether it's the hardware, whether it's how there are webcams, we can't even get our hands on webcams. The manufacturers are trying to build them as fast as they can. The speakers, things that we take for granted, that we're kitting and we're putting it all together so that they have a full solution remote classroom no matter where they are. And we're still in the unknown. I truly believe that, you know, if I had a crystal ball, there could be a hybrid ability where they'll have some students in the classroom as well as remote so that they can have the 6 feet distance. But we are going to have to help them at any moment be able to go from the classroom remote and have that continuity, as Sarah was alluding to, and making sure that they're connected, because it's a scary thing when a child is no longer connected. I was listening to one of the teachers, and both of this particular student's parents were essential workers, and they, the teachers literally would have to call the student every day to wake them up. And it's just, it's sad. And the more that we can do for the students and give them that full solution and help the parents, they're going to be successful. We actually work, our company has 3 amazing women that they come from academia, they come from the educational world, the K-12 world, principal, teachers, instructional technologists that know the technology that's needed. They focus a lot on Microsoft and to extend the conversation of having that could be a language gap. It could be a parent not understanding that, you know, how to use the technology. We're starting to put together different academies and professional development around how do you use Teams to collaborate? How do you use the immersive reader if you're dyslexic or if you have spatial issues? Changing the colors, using forms, and having videos integrated so that children have a better understanding of how to learn if they have an IEP. So we're trying to help in develop that full solution, that full kit, where a child will be successful and have everything that they need.
Oh, wonderful. And just to kind of switch gears to the next topic, with the Nashua project. Can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. So we have, again, amazing folks within our company where we have our business development manager, Joe, who works in conjunction with Nashua School District. And Bob does know everyone. He knows everyone in any state. And he was talking to Nashua, and it's very interesting. So they deployed about 1,700 Chromebooks, but there's 11,000 students that are out there. So they were trying to figure out how do we fill that gap? How do we fill that homework gap? And so what we've done is we work with an amazing company, Planet ROI, from a recycling perspective. And there's two different things that you can do. You can take the equipment that you have and you can recycle them and then deploy them back out into the student's hands, or faculty for that matter. Or you can recycle the technology and you can gain assets, you can gain money, and you can buy new technology with those particular funds. They're amazing. They will either come get all of the equipment and basically write a check back, or they will send packing labels where they can be shipped to Planet ROI. So they've been super successful in the sense where we're trying to take technology that they currently have and reuse it or repurpose it, or if there are really kind folks out there that have the technology that don't need it anymore, and it's basically a doorstop, please send it our way. We will send it to Planet ROI, and we will turn that into green money that they can buy new technology with. So our hopes for Nashua for a successful start, to be able to deploy and work with Planet ROI and work with Sarah and work with everyone, from the banks out to the recycling and deployment. So we're really hoping that we've got some kind donors out there to help us and get some systems into the hands of students that don't have it today.
I think we might ironically have a digital equity access challenge.
Oh, no.
I think we may have lost Lee. Terry Lee, I think we may have lost you, Terry. So I'll step in the breach. And as promised in our homework and getting ready for this conversation today, we're very excited about this. One of the things that we want participants to really come away with is conceptually some understandings about us. Two things really broadly. One is that a systemic approach to digital equity is really important if you want to make sure that the investments you're making in broadband and or devices really have impact. And so it does need to take into account tech support and some other things we're talking about in future webinars. But the other takeaway we really hope to convey to you is that there are allies that stand ready in every state in the union to help you tap into digital equity resources that can help you in the ways that we're talking about today. So, for example, one of the partners that Terry mentioned in last week's webinar is the State Education Technology Directors Association, or SETDA, or CETA. And we all on this call have been partnering for some time with CETA we're preparing to roll out virtual state summits that mobilize banking and foundation and educational system and ed tech leaders in a given state to really look at how do we spur capacity building, particularly in lower income communities, around removing digital divide obstacles in these comprehensive kinds of ways. And so one of the things that I wanted to mention is two things really. One is VISTA, which is an initiative where we've gotten some CRA grant support from a bank, a different community bank, another little engine that could, a bank or savings bank that's provided some generous grant support for us to create a chapter that involves kids, middle school and high school kids, in an after-school program in Manchester, New Hampshire, where we get them on the right side of the digital divide by equipping them with devices and with subsidies for home broadband. And we also grow their capacity to provide tech support for other low and moderate income kids and families in the city of Manchester. We also get these kids banked and make sure that they have bank accounts, checking accounts, make sure their families do, and they in turn are helping to grow capacity around what's called financial inclusion, which is equitable access to banking services like checking accounts, free financial literacy education, asset building, mentoring, credit repair counseling, and so on, financial literacy education. So it's a very systemic approach, and integral to that is the CRA support for all of that, but particularly for equitable access to devices, as we've been talking about today. And another piece is that I want to share, looking back to something Ulrike alluded to in passing very modestly, is the lovely work that she and her colleagues in Franklin, New Hampshire are doing at Franklin Savings Bank with CRA resources, partnering with the state's Manufacturing Extension Partnership, the City Council, the school board, the superintendent, the ed tech director for the school district in the town, and major employers to build pathways to living wage jobs in manufacturing that manufacturers locally are having difficulty filling. And all of this is a very holistic approach where everybody is taking the long view that this is going to be slow and steady wins the race, and we're just removing barriers as we encounter them. And so what we want you to come away with is a sense of a tremendous optimism that there's a lot of lemonade to be made right now during the pandemic, because this has really brought to the fore the challenges of the digital divide, and they've been less obvious before. And as Lisa was saying, 11 million kids lack home access to devices, and many millions more also lack affordable access to broadband at home, what many call the homework gap. And you should know that in every state, as we start rolling out state summits, additional ones to the ones we've already been having, we will be doing capacity building with you and other partners in your respective states on how do we mobilize for sustained attention to these issues. Terry, does that help and make sense? Are you back on, I think?
It does. You know, and I'll tell you what, the universe is testing us. They said we said digital equity, and then we had to play good cop, bad cop. So my webcast decided to shut down, which is okay. I have an all-star crew working on it, and then I also have some fantastic presenters that could kind of take the ball and run with it, so to speak. We're working on getting myself back up and running with the slides. But I think this might be a great time to check the chat to see if we have any questions.
It looks like there's one there about working with after-school providers and libraries. Bob, I know we've talked about that quite a bit. The question is who can be a receiver and what's the process to apply for it?
So if I could, and Terry, please correct me if I lie about any of this. What makes, for non-bankers on the call today, what you should understand about CRA funding is that first and foremost, it's a federal requirement of banks to invest in economic opportunity in low and moderate income communities. And it is so. First and foremost, this is compliance spending by banks. They're required to do this. They do this every year. And nationally, banks conservatively are investing about $100 billion, and some estimates have it as high as $200 billion or more to address economic opportunity. And a lot of that funding goes for affordable housing and financial literacy education, financial inclusion, which is access to banking services, strengthening pathways to living wage jobs, and now most recently addressing digital divide barriers. That said, this funding tends to be inertial in the sense that the first responsibility of bank CRA compliance executives is to make sure that then when they get examined for compliance by the CRA monitoring agencies, that the examiners understand and support what they see the bank doing to meet these requirements to invest in economic opportunity. So that said, it's a very rare bank that actually has a competitive grant program where they issue requests for proposals This is more relationship building with the banks, and it's a matter of aligning with the bank's current priorities for how they're making long-standing investments year over year for economic opportunity, and how to align what you're doing around digital inclusion with what the banks are already doing. Terry, does that help and make sense?
That does.
I would say too that I think that places like libraries and after-school programs are particularly important and impactful for LMI communities. As Ulrike was mentioning, it's not just the devices through the school that's important. It's almost more important that it's there afterwards, and even to use just those families that are in a situation of homelessness is one example. Even when they do have devices, it can be really difficult for finding quiet time to study and to be able to focus in places like a shelter, things like that. So having those places to go for more focused study and support and all the things we've talked about as sort of the ecosystem, the foundation around the devices and the broadband access, those types of meeting places can particularly be a really good fit and really help these students where they need to be helped.
Mm-hmm.
We've actually seen a lot of the libraries in using the parking lots as ways of getting internet access if they currently weren't able to get access. So the libraries have absolutely stepped up, and everyone's keeping their social distance and staying in their vehicles, but they do have the ability, if they don't have it where they're located, where they live, they can go to these particular parking lots. And people forget that libraries qualify also for E-rate, and they get a certain amount of dollars per square foot. So that is another way that we can expand in other dollars to be able to enhance the connectivity for people who unfortunately don't have internet at home.
And if I could build, Lisa, on what you and Sarah were just sharing, Terry and Ulrike, that libraries have been, public libraries in particular, have been at this digital inclusion challenge longer than anyone as a stakeholder group. The American Library Association passed a resolution in the early to mid 90s, and I believe they were the first in the nation to do that, saying that equitable access to broadband and computers was really essential. I mean, they were a real pioneer in this before anybody else. And they were saying, look, if you go into just about any public library in the country, if that library has broadband and if they've got computers, then you as a patron can come in and we'll help you get access to these invaluable resources and help you use them successfully and safely. So they've been at this for a long time, and absolutely, emphatically, public and school and other libraries are absolutely eligible for support under CRA and other kinds of funding streams for addressing digital divide barriers. And to build on what Sarah and Lisa are saying about after-school programs, in New Hampshire, we're working, every state has a statewide network of after-school programs. And in New Hampshire, we're working with the board of the New Hampshire After School Network, and they're amazing to work with. And we're coaching them on how to develop relationships around digital inclusion. And they're very excited, as Lisa was saying, you know, kids are the digital natives. We're the digital immigrants, our generations, right? And they're the digital natives. And these kids, so what they're doing is they're saying, let's unleash these kids and equip them so they can provide tech support to those of us that, like in my generation, which is, I'm really a digital immigrant and really need lots of help from kids that are native and all this. But yes, these partners, and Julia, your question is really a great one, that all these partners are very eligible for funding, and it's a matter of developing a relationship with the banks in your community that are really eager to address these challenges of digital inclusion.
Wonderful. Okay, well, I'm back.
Oh, welcome back.
Okay. Do we have any? I'm I'm looking at the chat. Do we have any other questions to address?
Terry, this is Tori. There is one other question that's in the chat from Brandon Smith. The question that we have is, what specific types of digital inclusion activities qualify for CRA funding? And there is an example such as device refurbishment, digital literacy training. Please address that, one of the panelists, please.
I know. All the above. All the things that we're talking about. All of these have CRA precedents around them, which is why Terry came up with this fiendishly diabolical idea of this webinar series, on access to broadband, access to devices, tech support capacity building, high quality educational content, online content for financial literacy, financial inclusion, economic inclusion, educational opportunity, librarian support for cyber safety, device addiction, network addiction, media literacy and digital literacy skill development. All of those things, we know of CRA funding precedents to support every one of those. And so it's really a matter of connecting at the core of this. It's connecting for CRA funding purposes, is connecting these with the core goal of CRA, which is really to open up economic opportunity in low and moderate income areas, working with low and moderate income learners of any age. Does that help and make sense? And Terry, did I lie or was that accurate?
No, you're right on point. And I would just add this, just so the bankers and those also that are on the line tuning in, is, that activity could be CRA eligible. However, you need to make sure that you're taking a look at who you're doing it to. Is it LMI individuals? Where are you doing it? Is it LMI geographies, underserved areas, distress, disaster related? And then, of course, what type of activity are you engaging in? Is it lending, investment, or service? So covering those bases and talking with your compliance officer, talking with your examiner, depending on who your regulator is, if it's the FDIC, the OCC, or the FRB, that's gonna play into how it's viewed, how this activity is viewed. But taking everything and all things considered, what Bob said, it's exactly why we're gathered here today, is to show you ways to reach the LMI community, reach the folks, and provide solutions for the gaps that are showing themselves during this time.
Terry, can I add something? It's Ulrike here.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something. When we first started, we were under the assumption that if we donated our computers to the school and let the school we just donated them to the school and they decided who they would go to, that it would be automatic credit, because we, first of all, are located in a moderate income tract, and because of our percentage of free and reduced lunches. But what we found out is, and again, this was great that this was happening when we were going through the exam, because I asked the examiners that, and they said, no, that by in itself was not sufficient, that we needed something to confirm that the hardware actually went to an LMI family. Just because it went to the school and they decided to give it to someone, we needed evidence that it went to this LMI family. That's why we decided to do the letter, because if the school just gave it out, we wouldn't have any evidence that it went to an LMI family, and we needed that. So right. That was it was good for us the timing of it was good.
And if I could build on that, Terry, one of the things that Sarah mentioned earlier, I think really bears emphasis here. As we mature as a national ecosystem around digital equity in support of economic inclusion, as that matures, one of the wonderful opportunities is we can and should go beyond access, which is, of course, not by any means solved yet. So it's really going to focus on that. But we can be digging deep to make sure we're tapping research on the most impactful uses of technology for learning. And there's some extraordinary things that Sarah and her colleagues, for example, with BrainCo, are doing around what we know about the use, and Lisa as well, what they and their partners know about successful uses of technologies for learning that show evidence of impact. We believe that the national CRA ecosystem is ripe to not only make tremendous gains, statistically significant gains in improving equitable access to the devices, broadband, and tech support, and so on, but also to go from compliance to impact, so that we're really looking at not just access, but really looking at, are we moving the dials of moving more kids to staying in school, completing school, being able to do their homework successfully so that they achieve moving into careers that pay living wages. The impact is the next frontier on all this, and we are already starting to see evidence of moving beyond, yes, we've got CRA precedents for digital equity, to saying, okay, let's up our game and let's really go for impact. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Well, we have a couple minutes left here, and I think we have maybe a couple questions left. We might have to couch those, and then we can always answer them and then resubmit them back out to the folks that attended today, so that we do answer those questions. Fair enough?
Sure.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, wonderful. Well, with this last minute, I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and we got to experience some technical difficulties, but here, we're very fortunate that when that happens, we have the infrastructure to take care of it. Not everybody is in that position, and I think that was just a glaring example of how it should be, is that you should be able to access and come online, and if you do fall off, be able to gain access again, and not just be left out, and not have the infrastructure in place to make that possible. So what a fortuitous example that happened today. And with that, I thought all the information that you shared, all my presenters, was fantastic. Everybody was on point. I think that the folks that are listening in, they really got some nuggets to help make a decision. Do they want to move forward, and how they're going to move forward? I think there's a couple questions that are kind of alluding to that. How do we move forward, and how do we identify who needs what? So we'll huddle up together after this and kind of talk that through. But for now, I just want to let you know that the next webinar next week from 1 to 2 is the tech support piece of it. So now that we have the broadband, now that the folks have access to the devices, now how do you go about if you need to use the device, and if something goes wrong with it, what's in place? How does that look? Stay tuned. Next week we'll tell you more about it. But for now, I want us all to thank the wonderful presenters, Ulrike, Lisa, Bob, and Sarah, and thank you, Tori, for assisting us. With that, we'll end this webinar, and I'll definitely look forward to picking up that baton next week.
And thank you. This does conclude today's conference call. You may disconnect your lines, and thank you for your participation.